Welcome to In the News, Conversations Around Security, a new and dynamic podcast where we dissect the day's headlines through the critical lens of security risk management and where awareness meets analysis. Join us on the 1st and 15th of each month as we bring you a fresh episode packed with informative debates, expert analysis, and thought-provoking insights offering a nuanced perspective on the stories that shape our world. So buckle up and join us for a look at what's in the news, conversations around security. Hello, folks, and welcome to In the News, Conversations Around Security. I'm Luciano Cedroni, and with me, Brian Clayman. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the new norm in security, specifically downtown Toronto, but I would think it applies to probably every major city in North America. So before we get into that, I'm going to turn it over to my man, Brian. He's going to take the lead on this episode, switch things up a little. And so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you for screwing up the introduction. I thought I was going to tell them what we're talking about, so you've taken away my 2 cents there. So we're going to go back in time, probably about a year or 2 years when we first did the original podcast, which was what do we call it? The before we
Oh
changed the
my
name.
God. Jeez.
Oh my God. Anyways,
You got me off guard there.
okay. Well, anyway, so in that you were known as Lucky Luciano and I was Brian the Angry Man Clayman. As we prepared for today's podcast, you got me angry and pissed off, so just call me
Yes.
the Angry Man again. Okay. So I think what we're going to talk about this episode is really the new norm. Okay. What has changed?
A lot.
And what did you're interrupting? What did you say?
A lot has changed.
Oh, a lot has changed. Thank you. Thank you for that contribution. That was very deep and very profound. It's sort of interesting how we got to today's topic or today's title because Luciano and I were talking just beforehand. He's done a couple of interviews with the different media recently about things that are happening in Toronto in respect to protests and everything like that. And there was one he told me he did with one radio station, and he was asked. What's happening downtown with all these protests? And he said, business as usual. And I sort of went ballistic when I heard that. And I said, what do you mean business as usual? And I was about to cut him off my Christmas card list till I realized he's not very articulate and he's a little bit shy and he doesn't really think things through. And what he didn't mean, what he really meant to say, and I had to correct him, but the interview he did for the media was screwed up. It's not business as usual. It's business as usual in the new norm. And the new norm starts October 7th. So for the purpose of today's discussion, we're going to be talking about what has changed in managing security operations in commercial properties, venues, different types of facilities across Canada, major cities like Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, from October 6th backwards and October 7th forward. So what is the new normal? That's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay. So what's the first question?
Okay, so the first question is, Luke, because you operate a rather large commercial property in charge of security, which is in downtown Toronto, right at Center Court, and you've got demonstrations all around you.
Yeah.
What has changed since October 7th? I'm going to make it really simple for you because if you say it's business as usual, I'm going to come across the camera here and slap you. What has changed since October 7th? Your approach to security in terms of budget, in terms of preparation, in terms of uh, intelligence gathering, relationships. Over to you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to qualify what I mean by business as usual because
Please do,
obviously
because it's angry man you're
you
talking to.
yes, I have to definitely dot my I's and cross my T's.
Yes.
When I say business as usual, for me, it is business as usual in the sense that I'm continuing to do what I've always done in terms of good security practices, gathering intelligence, doing your assessments, networking with stakeholders, and things like that. What's changed is that the threat profile, I think, or the risk landscape, whatever you want to use, has changed and is actually expanding pretty quickly in the last few weeks. And, probably in the next couple of weeks, we're going to see more risks come out depending on what happens in the US and the Middle East.
So it's very interesting that you say this. Now, we've gone from business as usual to business as usual since October 7th to business as usual, and it's changing the last few weeks and changing even faster. Now, I don't know where you were educated. Were you educated in the old country? Because
I am
Business,
ESL. I will
if
give you that.
if you look at it in a linear timeline, usual, what is the framework in your definition of
We're
usual?
talking two
Last
different
40
levels.
seconds?
This is like if you've ever watched Star Trek, they have that four-dimensional chess set, and you're only on one dimension. I'm on
No,
four. All
but
right.
it's usual. It's dynamic. Okay, let me ask you this. I'm going to interview you. I'm going to sort of lead you. I'm going to ask you leading questions. Is the security threat environment dynamic?
Yes, of course. It's
And
always changing.
and as it's dynamic with changing threats in the way it materializes, it's requiring fine-tuning of your excellent state-of-the-art security program.
Yes, excellent as it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it requires fine-tuning, but that's my point. You're still using the same tools. You're using them differently. You may
But yes,
use them more.
but that's
But
not business as usual. It's
right.
business. We have a base.
That's why I clarified business as usual for me is how I operate normally. Things are changing. So yes, I have to change. You're right. It's not usual, but I'm still using the normal
I
tools that I have.
I that I do understand, but you realize that had I not made an issue of this and sort of walked you through this process, this would be a very boring episode. People after 3 minutes would say goodbye
Oh,
and hang up and say there's nothing to learn here because business is
okay.
usual. Okay, I'll give you another example. Okay, and then I'm going to take a deep breath. The business as usual thing really got me because one of the things I said to Luke in our pre podcast meeting is business usual malarkey. Do you think the Toronto Eaton Centre with their Santa Claus display this year is going to be the same as it was last year? Because last year they got overrun
Yeah.
by protesters and it sort of messed up Christmas for a lot
Yeah,
of
of
young
course.
people. Okay, so it ain't business as usual because you may see a lot of security officers standing around Santa Claus. You may see other things at Eaton Center that you didn't see in the past. That is not usual.
You may not even see Santa Claus the way things are going right now.
Talk about that.
All
That's
right.
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna. Obviously, I can't share details in terms of who I'm hearing it from and where I hear some of the
You
information.
have to share. We're in a rating sweep. This is rating sweep.
But I will say, I've been in some meetings with city people and police and social workers and security stakeholders and other venues that typically host holiday events. And there is a definite tone of worry there because major sponsors have already started to pull back. They don't want to spend money, first of all, on an event that could be overrun, to your point, and just spend that money for no reason at all. But the risk that comes with that event is also on their mind, right? Like if I'm paying for something at whatever, the tree lighting at the Eaton Center or at City Hall or whatever, or Dundas Square, right? They all have these great events. If I'm sponsoring that and something happens, well, you can bet your ass they're gonna be suing me. So they're starting to think twice about that and either canceling events right out or moving it somewhere else.
This is a bloody shame. It's a bloody shame that traditions in this city, in this country, and the way of life in Canada and Toronto, things that we do, we're changing. We're doing this because a bunch of people that don't believe in our values, that are upset about something happening 6,000 miles away. Is this what Justin Trudeau's Canada has
Well,
become?
that's
Like,
what I'm saying. I agree with you. We're letting these people do what they're doing, but I put the blame squarely on the freaking politicians and the leaders. Where are they? They've allowed this shit to happen. They sit in their closet, they sit in their friggin' desk, they don't say anything. Nobody's out there, denouncing anything. And then they expect it to just go away. You're emboldening these people. They're going to become more aggressive as things start to sort of play out, right? Eventually, the Israelis are going to beat the crap out of Palestine. That's a no-brainer. And who knows how much bigger it's going to get from there. You're emboldening these people to become more disruptive, more angry, and take action that we're not going to agree with. It's not very Canadian.
What I try and do is I try and compartmentalize the way I've approached this because I realize there's strong passions on both sides. And, my thoughts or feelings may be different than someone else's thoughts
Yeah.
or feelings. And it's I sort of respect it. I mean, they're wrong and I'm right, but, we're not going to go there. But I look at this very simplistically. And as a security practitioner operating in this city, in Toronto, or across Canada, quite honestly, to me, there's two pieces to it. There's what's happening in the Middle East and the actions of the IDF and the Israeli military and Hamas in Iran. And I am not a geopolitical expert, so I really can't say if the Israelis are doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And I don't even want to go there. But what I can say with certainty is that the Jewish schools being shut up in Toronto and the aggression we're seeing on the streets and the fact that my son can't get around downtown Toronto because every weekend there's a demonstration of major arterial intersections are shut down. That is wrong. That is what has to stop. And I'll correct you on one thing when you say our politicians are saying nothing. I disagree. They are saying thoughts and prayers.
Oh
Our
yeah,
thoughts and prayers.
yeah,
And yeah and our hearts go out to you. So they really are. I just find it so precious when I hear, and even the ones that are better than those that are not, like the premier, and I think I talked about this last week, you know, saying that this is not Ontario, this is unacceptable, this is not, going to be allowed. Well, Mr. Ford, Mayor Chow, Prime Minister Trudeau, if you guys aren't going to fix it, who is going to fix it? And if you don't fix it, I think someone will try to fix it, and that's not going to be a good outcome either. So that's why, the new normal,
yeah.
okay, the new normal has all sorts of threats, and the threats are not just from the obvious actors, but it's like a pressure cooker, I believe, in this country, and certainly in this city. And sooner or later, you're going to see, if it hasn't already started, types of vigilantism. People are going to take the law into their own hands. I mean, we had a mosque, I think, a few days ago.
Yep.
Some person went in there and made threats to people that were praying and practicing their faith. I mean, I don't know the story, the background behind that, but that's probably some idiot that's just charged by what's happening. I was going to say there's idiots on all sides. I'm not
No,
sure. I'm not sure there are.
no,
I
I
think the violence.
disagree. And I'm gonna tell first of all, you're a terrible question asker. Okay?
Okay.
You haven't asked a damn question. But I will tell you this, because now you're getting me riled up. I had I could honestly say up until you know what? I don't know when it changed. I know when it changed. I could say to your point, what's going on over there is going on over there, and Canada's Canada, and we got to compartmentalize and separate the two. I agree 100%. But when you say one side or the other, they've made that decision for you. Okay, when somebody gets out on the goddamn street and burns my fucking flag, okay, and starts saying death to Canada, they've made their decision. You're not my friend. Simple
Yeah.
as that. I don't care what your goddamn religion is and what you believe. But to me, that is the biggest thing that's pissed me off in the last few months now is the disrespect that they've shown to the country they've come to. We didn't freaking tell them to come here. They came here for a new opportunity. And now they sit there damning the country, wanting it to fall, and we're sitting there doing nothing. That's a one-way ticket back to wherever the hell they came from. Sorry.
Well, if you would have been a little more patient, that was going to be my next question. How do you feel? But you jumped the gun. Oh, listen, I couldn't disagree. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay. What I really don't understand is that, and I think I've said this in the past, my wife is Irish. I fall in love with Ireland. And I
Sorry.
go, I think you may have a similar.
Yes, I can relate.
Yeah. When I go to Ireland, I love Ireland. I don't want Ireland to be like York Region is. I don't want it to be like Toronto is. I'm going for that Irish experience. And I know that, if I wanted Sharia law, okay, if I really thought that the life in Gaza, or let's not say Gaza, let's say in Iran or other countries,
Pick a
okay,
country, man. Any country.
okay, is better, then why are you coming here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite honestly, because you don't see a lot of Canadians immigrating to Iran or to Gaza.
Yeah.
So, point, if you're coming here and we're welcoming you here, we need immigrants, we need people to help us build this country, but we don't need people to tear down this country. And I was listening to a guy from one of the military institutes in Canada. I heard him on the radio, and he was just saying that. The Americans are really getting concerned about our ability to pull our weight,
Yeah.
our weight in terms of the protection of North America. For example, we're not, our military is underfunded. We're not meeting our 2% NATO commitment. There's been, I think, 4 terror-related arrests in Canada, people trying to go into the States over the last year. The Americans are saying, guys, we got a problem over here. You're not doing your part. And the current government, that hopefully won't be the government for much longer, has really taken a position that, look, we're Canada. We're gonna bring people in the way we bring them in. We're not gonna vet them, or we're gonna vet them. That's our. You can't be wiggling your finger at the tiger. Because if we're not going to take care, do our part to help keep or prevent people from coming into Canada and then penetrating into the States and involved in violent terrorist type activity, the Americans are going to react. And you're going to see that backlash really quickly. And certainly with Trump, that build the wall. I'm not saying he's going to build a wall over here, but the Justin Trudeau way of handling international affairs like this, the Americans are going to put tariffs on us. They're going to do all sorts of things if we don't smarten up. And it may even be too late.
Well, and I think you're right, because I've heard on some of the news stations, some of these political pundits from the US talking about the fact that their northern border, everyone's worried about the southern border, and that's the focus. And yeah, if Trump gets in, he's going to build the wall, but they're saying we should be looking north because nobody's checking there. It's that back door. And you haven't even talked about the complete failure of our intelligence. And let me correct that. It wasn't the failure of our intelligence services, our politicians, to heed the warnings of our intelligence service in terms of foreign interference. What does our government do? They don't even want to tell us the names. They work for us, and they don't want to tell Canadians who the hell these people are. They're in our government today. Why would anybody in the U.S. government want to do business with us right now?
I understand. And the Prime Minister's performance last week at the inquiry, where he talked about how there are parliamentarians that have been infiltrated or working wittingly or unwittingly for foreign governments. And then he points the finger at the Conservatives. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. And it could be, for all I know. I'm just not privy.
I think the timing's a little suspect.
What's that?
I think the timing's a little suspect.
The timing's a little bit suspect because when he was cross-examined by the attorney for the Conservative Party, he admitted that there were people like that also in the Liberal Party.
Right.
He wasn't going to bring that out unless he was asked directly.
Of course.
I mean, the fact that we have leaders, political leaders, and maybe now, that are basically putting party before country is really concerning. It's really concerning.
I don't know the definition of treason, but I'm telling you, that's got to be like right on the line somewhere. I mean, they are willingly turning a blind eye to things that are targeting the very fabric of this country, and they are politicizing it versus protecting the country.
And I don't understand even the calculus, because if had Trudeau come out and said, we've got 2 or 3 or 4 people that are suspected of such and such type thing, if he named them, or if he couldn't name them, if at least he ostracized them and ensured they weren't in a position of power, he'd be a hero. Yeah. He would score for the first time in years some brownie points, thinking about the country. These guys are too thick to really. Even Polyev, I'm disappointed. Like Polyev hasn't taken the top secret briefing. My understanding was that he didn't want to take the briefing because if he had that information, he couldn't do anything with it anyways. I would think at the very least, you'd make sure that you don't make this person your deputy opposition leader, or you don't make this person your shadow finance minister. You got to know this information. This idea of your head in the sand, like Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, but I can see.
Not listening.
I can see where he's going with that. I think it's a move for him to be able to say that. If he doesn't see it at all, then he can keep bringing it. He can keep putting it in the headlines. He can keep saying,
maybe
tell us the names. Whereas if he reads it, then Trudeau will sit back and go, here, he knows what the names are. Okay, but what can he do with it? Nothing. So yeah, I know that's the reason.
I know, but well, again, maybe there are reasons, and he didn't check it with me. I just hope that our authorities, the RCMP, the intelligence community, but certainly the RCMP, the policing community, if there's credible intelligence of people involved in espionage or in violation of their oath of office, I hope heads roll. I hope there's investigations.
Who's going to investigate the RCMP? And I'm not. We're both police supporters, but Jesus Christ, man, they've sold their souls to this government. Okay, when we had that inquiry with the guy in, oh my God, Nova Scotia, the mass shooting out in the school.
Yeah, right? Brent Malecki was the
whole disaster around the guns and all that kind of stuff. Then the police stations that disappeared, the Chinese police stations. Now they're with this thing going on in India. Like, it seems like they're a police force of convenience, and when it's something that benefits the government, all of a sudden they've got a role to play. Otherwise, you don't see them at all.
Well, it certainly makes you wonder with that Nova Scotia inquiry, and I think the government was trying to ban guns. And
Yeah,
I'm going to get it wrong, but essentially, one day the commissioner of the RCMP said that took one position.
yeah.
It was contrary to the government position, and interestingly, the next day her position changed. So you're right. It's not about doing the right thing; it's about being seen to do the right thing. And there's been a lot of mismanagement, and I said it's a failure of leadership. I think leadership at all levels, policing levels as well, municipal government levels. Like the mayor of Toronto, there's very little she can do in terms of
You could put a
power.
full stop right there. There's very little she can do. End of story.
She should talk out emphatically. And when that school, the October 7th anniversary, and that whole
Yeah, she didn't
fiasco
show
that
up.
she didn't attend.
Yeah.
But what she said was, I was wearing black that day. Come on. Like, she had announcements about the city's doing a study about playgrounds and parks, and she was getting all animated and excited. Why can't you get animated and excited about the things that are important? Like picking up the cadavers of dead animals in like not 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, or 10 days.
So
But why don't you focus on the quality of life things or the things of public safety?
so just to tie it back to the new normal when it comes to
New normal.
security.
The new normal is Brian the Angry Man. That's the new normal.
Well, it is, but they force you to be that way. And I'm gonna say, like for us, you go about the new normal. That's the new normal. What our guards are faced with, you're going out there with disinformation, misinformation, global, it's not global, but leaders in the city that are absent, a police service that is absent, and yet people expect security to be there. To do what? They have no special power that makes them more capable of doing something. All we can do is put more guards on the street, shut down a door, say hello to the right people, make sure the right people get in the building. But it's just ludicrous what people are expecting security to do in these circumstances when the so-called professionals can't get their act in gear.
You told me a story about a accident that you witnessed with a work event, I believe it was, and someone fell down and were hurt, and we had to call an ambulance. You had to call an
Oh,
ambulance.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, tell that story because it's not the police, but it's sort of typical about the core things that we need to do in the city from a public safety perspective. It's all failing.
Yeah, I won't name the event because I don't want to rat
Yeah,
them out.
yeah.
It's a fundraiser event. It was a good news. It was a good news event, and it was well attended, all that kind of stuff. So it was all great. Unfortunately, we had one of our employees collapse. We thought at the time it was something very serious, but now he's okay. But at the time, we thought it was serious. We had no idea what it was. Smacked his head off the concrete. Something serious.
Mm.
And it took the ambulance over 45 minutes to get there. We were 2 blocks from Hospital Row. Like we could have walked the person over to the hospital
Oh,
faster than the ambulance got there.
you weren't up in Northern Ontario when this
No,
happened.
no, no. Maybe they got their coordinates wrong. Maybe the person who called it in told them we were up there. We were literally 2 blocks from Hospital Row.
So, this is really interesting because when we talk about response times and everyone, the police are very concerned they don't have the manpower, the 911 centers are not staffed properly. Here we have Toronto EMS with this terrible story. But one can't help but wonder that it takes so long because they are so woefully understaffed and under-resourced, or is it maybe that the city is so congested with construction and protests activity?
Yeah,
Like this is the thing.
probably a bit of both.
We've
And
just
to be
got,
fair, Brian, paramedics are probably the hardest working emergency service out there.
believe
More,
me,
more than the cops,
I
more than the
agree.
fire.
Yeah. And it's thankless. No, I agree
Yep,
100%. What I'm saying is that things are breaking.
yep,
Rather than worrying about the stupid things that our politicians are worrying about, okay? Get down to the core things. The city of Toronto, it really bugs me that thing about dead animal removal. Okay,
yes,
from a 2 day standard, they couldn't meet the standard,
yeah,
then to 3 days, then 5 days, now it's 10 days. I heard John Tory say something really interesting. He says, it's one thing if you can't meet the standard, okay, because the tax base doesn't allow you to do it. They raise taxes more than they've ever raised before. And then they lower the standard, make it worse and worse and worse, and taxpayers are paying more and more money. They
yep,
don't have the money to make that program work, okay? They have parks and rec workers saying that they're at a park when their GPS says they're at a different location, not
yes.
you know, They changed Nathan Phillips Square, not Nathan, Young Dundas
Dundas
Square.
Square, yeah.
Rather than spending $2,000 on signs, there's millions and millions of dollars on programs and
Yep.
festivals. Like, give your head a shake, Toronto
Yeah.
and this country. Focus on the things that need to be worked on and
Yeah.
not all these stupid glory passion projects.
Yeah. Because the radar right now looks really dark. People are leaving that city. What's going to happen with the property values? Probably going to tank at some point, and they don't just keep going up and up. If people start leaving, people don't want to move in there. Well, and I don't know how, the last time you took a walk down some of those major streets downtown, man, it's just one empty business after another. Like
Well,
it,
okay,
it is brutal.
I'm going to put my interviewer hat on now. I'm going to redeem myself. I'm going to ask you the question. You work right downtown in the heart of the city, Young Dundas Square, right near the Eaton Center in Center Court. You've been downtown for 20 years,
Yeah.
okay? You're part of that security community down there. What's the new normal? What's it look like downtown? You sort of alluded to what do the buildings look like? What does your building look like
The
in terms of
buildings, well, our building looks pretty good in terms of the building, but it's still very
Oh,
vacant. The
yes, I
occupancy
know.
isn't there.
Yeah, the building is very
Yeah.
good. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
building, but I mean capacity, the hustle bustle, I
Nothing,
don't see
man.
it.
Nothing like when we were down there, when we used to work down there together. Place was packed. Lunchtime was packed. Now it's a ghost town. And that
You know,
includes, like, I go through the Eaton Center regularly. It's not as packed as I recall.
and to be clear, it's not because of what's happening since October 7th, but that is a contributing factor. I mean, this was COVID and remote work and all that type of stuff. But we're not making it pleasant to come downtown
No.
anymore with
And there's no plan to
congestion,
make
with
it pleasant.
violence. It is ridiculous.
There is no plan to make it. I'll give you another quick story because I know we're running short on time, but it just tells you everything that's wrong with this city. I hate taking the TTC, but just by the nature of where I work, I take the TTC up to this other property. It's 3 stops. That's it. I get on. There's a 2-minute delay because of a signal problem. Well, that's normal on the new normal on the TTC, right? Delayed. So I'm like, okay, well, it's going to start soon. So 2 minutes to wait. The train starts to go. Before we take off, 3 guys come on and they've got their crack pipes out in the open, no problem, right? They sit on one side of me. We stop and 2 special constables come on. They come on the other cab, but it's
Yeah.
all open, right? So they can see what's going on. They come on the far end. That's the first stop. Second stop, the special constables get off. Don't do anything about the 3 guys with the crack pipes, and 3 girls come on from I guess TMU or whatever, but three young ladies come on. They sit where the special constables were, and all of a sudden these 3 guys start glaring over at the girls. And my third stop comes up, and I'm like, well, I don't carry a badge no more, and I'm not going to babysit these people. They're all adults. I get off the train, so whatever happens there happens. But I walk into another female yelling at the security at the Bloor, the main station there, Bloor Young.
Yeah.
And she's yelling at security, calling them every name in the book in terms of their racial profile. And you got to go back to your country. And I just looked at myself as I walked out. And I'm like, where's the camera? Like, there's got to be a candid camera or something around here. It's absurd. In that 3 stops, what I saw, and that's the new norm, man. That is the new norm in the city.
So, okay, so you just described, it almost sounds like the sequel to a Mad Max movie from the 70s.
We're not
But
far off.
But to bring it back also then to the security thing, so we now have a new normal where it's a dynamic security situation. It's potentially dangerous for security guards, and if you look at the injury rate,
Absolutely.
the fatality rate, okay,
Yep.
guards are still making the same, like they make lower than people that working at McDonald's. And then we got to get them to downtown Toronto to protect these venues. We don't give them free parking.
Yep.
It wouldn't matter because most of them don't have cars anymore, so we
Can't
expect them
afford
to take transit. This is a recipe for disaster.
it.
I mean, my clients tell me, and you probably, if you were a good friend, you would be one of my clients, but you don't give me any business. But they tell me it's really hard to get guards to come downtown.
And it's going to get harder now with the restrictions.
Yeah.
Because they're all students. The majority are students, and now that the government's clamping down on that, now we're going to end up with a shortage.
Well, it's really simple. It's like a supply and demand. If there's going to be a shortage, and if there's a shortage of quality trained people, we got to stop paying minimum wage plus $1.
Yeah, self-correcting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if that means it's a $30 an hour job, I know that if you work as a screener, my son used to be a manager for CATSA, and those people, back in the day were making 27, $28 an hour type thing. And they're really not skilled, the basic training, and no one's going to be spitting at them or lunging at them with a knife or something like that. So they were making 27 when guards were making 17 and 18. Like there is something wrong, and a correction is coming, and hopefully will be a soft reset, not a hard reset.
It is coming, and I hope it's a soft reset. I don't believe that. I think it's going to be a hard reset because we've gone too far. So looking at the time, because you're not, and I will. This has proven to be a pretty. You got my blood boiling, that's for sure. Before I sign off, I would urge Torontonians in particular, but certainly Vancouverites, Calgary now, Montreal. People need to wake the hell up in terms of and look at what's going on in your city. And if it's a shit show, which I probably 100% almost there is, you need to step up and start demanding better from your goddamn politicians, from your police service, from everybody. Hold them accountable. This is not just because it's the new norm doesn't mean we have to accept it. And with that, I'm going to sign off.
Okay, I just want to say one thing. I think the listeners have to thank me profusely because this was going to be the most boring podcast in the history of podcasts. When we had our pre-meeting and we went over what we were going to do, I said, no friggin' way people are going to listen to this. I'm not going to be associated with something like this. I was surprised. And I got angry. And I started going after Luke, and he got angry. I said, hold that thought.
Yes.
We started recording. So this was a good one. It was rather animated. And it's
have
good.
A formula going forward.
Yeah, for formula going forward. I am, from this point forward, the angry man once again.
All right, folks. We'll talk to you next episode.
Be well. Like and subscribe.
Oh, yeah.